I am Clara. I am in my early 20s, and not too long ago, I collapsed on a sun-baked stage in front of thousands of people. It was the morning I was scheduled to deliver the valedictory address for my graduating class, a moment I had spent 4 years sacrificing my sleep, my sanity, and my youth to achieve. Instead of holding a diploma, I found myself in the back of an ambulance. The emergency room doctors discovered a mass pressing against the frontal lobe of my brain. They said they needed to operate immediately. They called my parents over and over. No one answered. 3 days later, when I finally clawed my way back to consciousness, fighting through a haze of anesthesia and the relentless, rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors, the first thing my heavy eyes focused on was not the worried faces of my mother and father. It was a glowing screen. A social media post from my older sister. There they were, the entire family, grinning brightly on a pristine white sand beach at a luxury tropical resort, crystal clear turquoise water stretching out behind them. The caption read, "Family vacation in paradise. Finally some time with no stress and absolutely no drama." I just stared at those words. I said nothing. I did not leave a comment. I did not call to scream at them or demand an explanation. I just lay there until the notification counter on my phone began to tick upward, showing dozens upon dozens of missed calls from my father, followed by a frantic barrage of text messages telling me to answer the phone immediately because it was an emergency. That was the exact moment I realized they were not calling because they had suddenly developed a conscience. They were not calling because they missed me or because they were terrified they had almost lost their youngest daughter. They were calling because they needed something else entirely, something that threatened the very fabric of their comfortable, self-centered lives. Before I take you through exactly how this nightmare unfolded, if you find this story resonates with you, please take a moment to engage with it, but only if you genuinely want to hear how a lifetime of being invisible finally comes to an end. And if you are listening right now, let me know where you are tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, let me pull you back. Let me take you back to a month before the collapse, to the week when the fragile illusion of my family began to fracture completely. For weeks before graduation, I am standing in the middle of the kitchen I grew up in. The air smells like expensive vanilla candles and fresh espresso, but the atmosphere is suffocating. I am watching my mother, Eleanor, aggressively flip through a massive stack of glossy bridal magazines. These are not for me, obviously. They are for Beatrice. My older sister had just gotten engaged to Julian, a man whose family owned half the real estate in the city, and overnight, the entire gravitational pull of our household shifted to revolve exclusively around her wedding timeline. My mother does not even lift her eyes from a spread of floral arrangements when she speaks to me. "Clara," she says, her tone brisk and expecting, "I need you to drive across town and pick up the fabric swatches from the decorator tomorrow afternoon." Beatrice is entirely too overwhelmed with her dress fittings. I am gripping the edge of the granite counter, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I have my final exams this week. I cannot spend 3 hours in cross-town traffic." She finally sighs, a sharp, dramatic sound, and turns a page. "You will manage, Clara. You always do. You are so good at juggling things." That is the fundamental curse of being the reliable child. Everyone simply assumes you will absorb the weight of the world without cracking. I had been handling things completely on my own for 4 years. I was working 25 hours a week at a crowded downtown diner, smelling like stale grease and burnt coffee, while somehow maintaining a perfect grade point average. I paid every single cent of my tuition through a patchwork of academic scholarships and the crumbled dollar bills I collected from my tip jar. Meanwhile, Beatrice had her entire private university education bankrolled by our parents, semester after semester, with a generous living stipend attached. No questions asked. No expectations of employment. I take a deep breath, trying to carve out a tiny space for myself in this house. "Mom, I actually wanted to talk to you about the graduation ceremony." I try to keep my voice light, casual, as if I am not begging for crumbs of her attention. "I need to figure out something to wear under the gown. I was hoping maybe you and I could go look at dresses this weekend." My mother stops flipping the pages. She looks up, but her eyes are vacant, her mind clearly a million miles away, likely calculating the cost of imported orchids. Sweetheart, you are so incredibly resourceful at finding those little online discounts. I am sure you can order something nice on your own. I simply cannot spare a second. I have to focus entirely on your sister's engagement banquet. It is in 2 weeks, and Julian's family expects perfection. But Mom, I push back, my voice trembling just a fraction. My graduation is a major milestone. Her posture stiffens, her tone immediately sharpening into a weapon. Clara, your sister is stepping into a new social circle. Her future in-laws are flying in. This banquet needs to be flawless. Do not be difficult. I swallow the lump in my throat. I nod. I always nod. It is the physical manifestation of my entire existence in this family. A silent, agreeable nod. Later that evening, I am sitting on the floor of my childhood bedroom, folding a pile of faded work uniforms, when I hear my mother's voice echoing up the stairs. She is on the phone with one of her country club friends. "Oh, yes, Clara's graduation," my mother is saying, followed by a hollow, practiced laugh. Yes, she is the top of her class, can you imagine? But honestly, the timing could not be worse. Beatrice's engagement banquet is the very same week, and obviously, that takes priority. Clara understands. She has always been so fiercely independent. Independent. I close my eyes and lean my head against the cool drywall. Independent is the word they always reach for when they really mean forgettable. It is the convenient label they slap on my neglect to make themselves feel better about it. That night, I desperately need to hear a voice that actually cares whether I sink or swim. I dial the only person in my family who has ever looked at me and seen a human being. Silas, my grandfather, picks up on the second ring. His voice is a deep, warm rumble that instantly makes the tight knot in my chest begin to loosen. "Clara, my girl," he says warmly. "I was just sitting here on the porch thinking about you." "Hey, Grandpa," I whisper, pulling my knees to my chest. "Tell me everything," he demands gently. "How are the exams? Have you finalized that valedictory speech yet?" For the next 20 minutes, I do not have to pretend to be strong or independent. I talk rapidly about the thesis paper that has been keeping me awake until 3 in the morning. I talk about the speech I have written and torn up and rewritten half a dozen times because I am paralyzed by the thought of standing in front of thousands of expectant faces. When I finally run out of breath, Silas is quiet for a moment. "Clara, do you have your dress yet? Do you have proper shoes? Do you need me to send you some money to get yourself something special?" My throat tightens so fast it actually hurts. "No, I am fine, Grandpa. Truly, I have it handled." He lets out a soft, knowing sigh. It is the kind of quiet that means he sees right through my brave facade. "Your grandmother would be so immensely proud of the woman you have become," he finally says, his voice thick with emotion. "You know that, right? She always used to tell me you had her exact spirit." I never had the chance to meet my grandmother, Cordelia. She passed away just a few months before I was born. But I have spent hours staring at old, sepia-toned photographs. Everyone who knew her tells me I am a carbon copy. I have her same dark, wavy hair, her same intense, searching eyes, her same stubborn jawline. "I will be there," Clara, Silas promises. "I will be sitting right in the front row, cheering the loudest." I would not miss this milestone for anything on this earth. My voice cracks as I thank him. It means more to me than I can possibly articulate. "And Clara," he adds, his tone turning conspiratorial and serious. "I have something for you. A gift. Your grandmother made me promise to hold on to it until the day you graduated. I have been keeping it safe for over 2 decades. Before I can ask him what on earth he is talking about, my bedroom door flies open without a single knock. Beatrice stands in the doorway, hands on her hips, looking wildly annoyed. "Clara, did you take my expensive dry shampoo? I cannot find it anywhere, and Julian is coming over." I cover the receiver of my phone. "I do not touch your things, Beatrice. You know that." She rolls her eyes dramatically, waving her left hand so the massive diamond catches the hallway light, wielding it like a weapon of superiority. "Whatever," she huffs. "Oh, and good job on the school thing, I suppose." Then she spins around and marches down the hall. I bring the phone back to my ear. Silas heard the entire exchange. He does not say a word about it, but his heavy, disappointed silence speaks volumes. 1 week before the graduation ceremony, my body begins to actively betray me. I am surviving on perhaps 4 hours of fitful sleep a night, an endless stream of black coffee, and a deep, burning reservoir of spite. My final exams are officially over. My massive thesis has been bound and submitted. But I am still pulling brutal double shifts at the diner because my rent is due, and I absolutely refuse to ask my parents for a loan. I know exactly how that plays out. They will hold it over my head for years, using it as ammunition to demand my compliance. My head has been pounding with a dull, relentless ache for 3 consecutive days. I swallow cheap painkillers and tell myself it is just tension. It is just exhaustion. It is always just stress. I am dragging a wet rag across a sticky vinyl table right as the diner is closing when my phone vibrates in my apron pocket. It is my mother. Clara, I need you to come to the house this weekend. The engagement banquet is on Saturday, and I need you to help coordinate the caterers and set up the floral arches. I pinch the bridge of my nose, squeezing my eyes shut. Mom, I cannot. I am scheduled to work. You will just have to call in sick, she says dismissively, as if my job is a cute little hobby. Beatrice needs her sister. The family needs you to pitch in. I grip the heavy diner phone so hard my knuckles turn stark white. What about what I need? I ask, the words spilling out before I can stop them. The line goes dead silent. The kind of silence that precedes a storm. Then, her voice drops an octave, dripping with condescension. Clara, please do not start with the dramatics. It is one single weekend. Your sister is only going to get engaged once. And I am only going to graduate from college once, I think to myself. I am the top of my class. I have worked myself to the absolute bone for 4 years while you paid for her to take spa trips and study abroad. But I do not say any of those things out loud. The conditioning goes too deep. Fine, I whisper in defeat. I will be there. The moment I disconnect the call, the familiar ache behind my eyes flares into a sharp, blinding spike of pain. The black and white checkered floor of the diner seems to tilt sharply to the left. I have to grab the edge of the counter to stop myself from falling. Are you okay? My manager asks, looking at me with genuine alarm. Yeah, I mumble, blinking away the dark spots dancing in my vision. Just need some sleep. Later that night, sitting alone in my cramped bathroom, I get a nosebleed that flows so heavily it takes 20 minutes and half a roll of paper towels to stop. I look at my pale, hollow reflection in the mirror and tell myself it is just the dry air. It is nothing. I am fine. On the drive back to my apartment the next day, my phone chimes continuously. A message from Beatrice. Do not forget to pick up the custom monogrammed napkins from the print shop. And please wear something that does not look like you bought it at a thrift store. Julian's parents are very judgmental. There is no hello. There is no thank you for helping. Just a list of demands. A moment later, a text from my father. Clara, you need to drive to the international airport on Friday night to pick up your aunt. Your mother and I are entirely too busy managing the banquet preparations. I pull my rusted car over to the shoulder of the road, shift into park, and grip the steering wheel until my hands shake. I cannot tell if the violent trembling in my fingers is born from suppressed rage, or if there is something physically breaking down inside my nervous system. An hour later, my best friend Maya lets herself into my apartment with her spare key. She is carrying a massive bag of spicy takeout food and wearing an expression of deep, aggressive concern. You look like a walking corpse, she announces, pushing past me and dumping the containers onto my tiny kitchen table. Good to see you too, I mutter, locking the door. Maya has been my anchor since the very first week of our freshman year. She is the only person on earth who has witnessed me completely break down over my family's casual cruelty. She is also painfully, brutally honest, a trait I alternate between deeply appreciating and actively fearing. Clara, sit down. She points to the chair, her tone leaving no room for argument. When is the last time you slept? I mean actually closed your eyes and rested your brain. I sleep, I say defensively, opening a container of noodles. You are a terrible liar, she says, crossing her arms over her chest. I ran into your manager at the coffee shop this morning. He told me you nearly collapsed against the counter last night. I was just dizzy, Maya. It is the finals. It is the lack of sleep. It is the stress. It is your toxic family stress, she corrects, her voice softening just a fraction. Clara, you are literally grinding your own bones to dust to build a pedestal for people who will not even bother to show up to watch you shine. They are coming to my graduation, I snap back instinctively. Are they? She challenges, leaning across the table. I open my mouth to argue, to defend them, but the words turn to ash in my throat because the horrifying truth is, I do not actually know. My mother has not mentioned the ceremony in weeks. My father keeps asking what day it falls on. Beatrice does not even know what the word valedictorian means. They will be there, I say, but my voice sounds small, weak, and pathetic. It is my graduation. It is a big deal. Maya sighs, a sound of profound exhaustion. Honey, in 4 years, they have not attended a single one of your academic award ceremonies. Not one. Remember sophomore year when you won that massive state fellowship? Who was sitting in that auditorium? You, I whisper, looking down at my hands. You and Silas. Exactly. She reaches across the table and wraps her warm hands over my freezing ones. Clara, listen to me. You do not have to keep setting yourself on fire just to keep them warm. They are not even looking at the flame. They are just complaining about the smoke. My eyes begin to sting violently. I blink rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. After Maya leaves that night, I am standing at my bathroom sink, brushing my teeth, when my reflection suddenly splits into two. My vision completely doubles. I drop my toothbrush and grip the edges of the porcelain sink as a wave of intense nausea washes over me. The headache has returned, but it is no longer a dull ache. It feels like a physical pressure, like someone is inflating a balloon behind my left eye. A rational voice in my head tells me I need to go to a hospital. But then I remember the engagement banquet is less than 24 hours away. If I ruin Beatrice's perfect weekend with a medical scare, I will never hear the end of it. I dry swallow 3 pain pills, crawl into my bed, and pray for sleep. My phone illuminates the dark room. A text from Maya. If anything feels wrong, call your grandfather. He is the only one in your bloodline who actually gives a damn. I do not type a response, but I do not delete the message either. The day of Beatrice's engagement banquet arrives, and it is a masterclass in opulent excess. I have been on my feet for 7 straight hours in uncomfortable heels. I have hauled dozens of folding chairs, arranged towering displays of imported lilies, refilled silver champagne buckets with crushed ice, and played the role I was essentially bred for. The invisible, unpaid support staff. The backyard of our family estate looks like a cinematic set. Thousands of fairy lights are woven through the branches of the ancient oak trees. A string quartet is playing softly in the corner. There is a multi-tiered cake sitting on a customized glass table that easily cost more than my entire annual rent. 50 guests, dressed in expensive cocktail attire, are drifting across the manicured lawn, laughing, drinking, and offering endless toasts to my sister's brilliant future. Not a single person approaches me to ask about my future. Clara, we need more of the vintage champagne near the fountain, my mother snaps, waving a manicured hand at me as she glides past with a group of Julian's relatives. I force my lips into a polite smile, grab 2 heavy bottles from the cooler, and navigate through the sea of silk and expensive cologne. My head is throbbing so violently I can hear my own pulse roaring in my ears. Beatrice is holding court by the decorative fountain, looking radiant in a custom designer dress, Julian's arm draped possessively around her waist. She has consumed at least 4 glasses of champagne and is loudly basking in the attention. "Oh, everyone, this is my little sister," she announces as I approach to refill the glasses. She grabs my arm, pulling me awkwardly into the center of the circle. Clara literally does all the grunt work around here. Honestly, I do not know how this party would have happened without her running errands. A few of the guests offer me tight, polite smiles. A scattering of light applause. I try to step back into the shadows, but Beatrice leans in, her voice carrying easily over the string music. She is so good at, being helpful. She is studying to be a teacher. Can you imagine? Wiping sticky noses and grading finger painting for a living. A ripple of genuine laughter moves through the group. Light, dismissive, wealthy laughter. I keep my plastic smile frozen on my face, though my jaw is aching from the effort. Oh, and she is actually graduating from her little college program next week, Beatrice adds, waving her empty glass as if it is a trivial afterthought. She is what is the word? The girl who talks at the end. Valedictorian, I supply quietly, my voice barely carrying over the splashing water of the fountain. Right that. Beatrice laughs, leaning her head on Julian's shoulder. She has always been the nerdy one. But unfortunately, being smart does not buy designer handbags, does it? More laughter. Julian chuckles, kissing the top of her head. I excuse myself as quickly as I can, retreating to the safety of the massive kitchen. I lean my back against the cool stainless steel refrigerator and practice breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds. Through the window that looks out onto the patio, I notice an older gentleman watching me. I recognize him vaguely. Mr. Sterling, a retired judge and an old friend of my grandfather. His expression is completely unreadable, a stern mask of observation. My phone buzzes in my pocket. A text message from a number I do not have saved. Your grandfather needs to know exactly how these people treat you. I look up sharply. Through the glass, Mr. Sterling catches my eye, raises his crystal glass in a silent, solemn salute, and turns to walk away. My hands are shaking so badly I drop my phone on the floor. And this time, I know deep in my bones that the tremors are not just from the humiliation. Something inside my body is structurally failing. Long after the guests have departed, I am standing alone at the kitchen sink, my arms plunged up to the elbows in scalding soapy water, scrubbing serving platters. The rest of the family is collapsed in the living room, loudly admiring the gifts and recounting the best moments of the night. The kitchen door swings open and my mother walks in. Her face is flushed with wine and the high of a successful social event. Clara, I have the most wonderful news to share, she announces brightly. I do not turn around. I keep scrubbing a stubborn stain on a ceramic plate. What is it? We are going on a trip. The whole family. Julian's parents generously offered to fly us all out to their private tropical resort to officially celebrate the joining of the families. My hands freeze in the water. The suds pop silently around my wrists. A trip? When are we leaving? Next weekend, she says breezily. We fly out late Friday evening. It is going to be spectacular. Friday evening. The phrase echoes in my ringing ears. My graduation ceremony begins at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. I slowly pull my hands out of the water, reach for a towel, and turn to face her. Mom. My graduation is on Saturday. She waves her hand dismissively, the exact same gesture Beatrice uses. Oh, I know, sweetheart. But the flights were already chartered, and it is a private jet. We could not possibly ask Julian's family to rearrange their entire schedule just for a college ceremony. You are going to miss my graduation. You are missing my graduation for a beach vacation. My voice is rising, a desperate, raw edge bleeding into my tone. Clara, please do not use that tone with me. Do not frame it like that. My mother's face tightens into a skull. It is not just a beach vacation. It is a vital networking event for your sister's new life. I am the valedictorian, Mom. I am delivering the keynote address to thousands of people. I have worked for 4 years for this single morning. And you will be absolutely wonderful up there on that stage, she replies smoothly, completely untouched by my pain. You do not need us sitting in the hot sun to know you did a good job. You have always been so utterly self-sufficient. I just stare at her. I stare at the woman who brought me into this world, waiting for a flicker of realization to cross her features. Waiting for her to hear the profound cruelty in her own words. Waiting for a mother's instinct to kick in. Absolutely nothing happens. Her eyes are blank. My father walks into the kitchen, loosening his expensive silk tie. He glances between the two of us, sensing the tension, but he refuses to make eye contact with me. Clara, your mother, and I discussed this at length. Beatrice is navigating a massive life transition. She needs the unified support of her family right now. And graduating at the top of my university class is not a major life transition? I ask, my voice breaking. You're strong, Clara. My father sighs, running a hand over his face, sounding deeply inconvenienced by my emotions. You have always been the tough one. You do not need our hands held the way your sister does. Suddenly, the kitchen floor seems to drop an inch. The expensive pendant lights swinging above the island blur into streaks of blinding white. I grip the edge of the counter so hard my fingernails dig into the stone. Clara. My mother's voice sounds like she is speaking from underwater, distorted and distant. You look extremely pale. Are you going to be sick? I am fine. I force the words out through clenched teeth. I am not fine. My peripheral vision is entirely consumed by dark, pulsing shadows. The pressure behind my left eye is no longer an ache, it is a violent, screaming agony. I need to leave. I manage to whisper. I have the opening shift at the diner tomorrow. I turn and walk out the back door into the cool night air before they can say another word, before they can see the tears finally spill over my lashes. I get into my rusted car, lock the doors, and sit in the absolute darkness of the driveway for 10 full minutes, struggling to pull air into my lungs. Then I drive back to my dark, empty apartment, collapse onto the worn rug in my living room, and sob until my throat is raw and my ribs ache. 3 days before the graduation ceremony. I am lying flat on the floor of my apartment because the simple act of fighting gravity to stand up feels completely impossible. My phone is lying next to my ear on speakerphone, Maya's voice crackling fiercely through the terrible audio. Let me get this straight. They are skipping your valedictory address to go sip margaritas on a private island. A vacation, Clara. They are abandoning you for a vacation. It is to celebrate Beatrice's official entry into Julian's family, I whisper, staring blankly at a water stain on my ceiling that ironically looks like a fractured heart. Clara, stop it. Stop defending them. Stop making pathetic excuses for people who treat you like garbage. I am not making excuses, Maya. I am just accepting the reality of who they are. That is honestly so much worse, she snaps. I hear her pacing on the other end of the line. For years you missed parties, you worked double shifts, you survived on instant ramen, you nearly worked yourself into an early grave, and they cannot politely decline one single weekend trip. Apparently not. I close my eyes. Maya goes quiet for a long moment. When she speaks again, all the anger is gone, replaced by a quiet, terrifying concern. Clara, how are you feeling? Physically, I mean. You sounded really strange on the phone last night, and your manager said you had to sit down in the back room for an hour. I am fine, Maya. I swear. I am just exhausted. It will all be over in 3 days. That night, I jolt awake at 3 in the morning. My hands fly to my head. The pain is so absolute, so blindingly intense, that a pathetic, whimpering sound escapes my throat. I try to sit up and the world violently spins. I stumble blindly in the dark, bouncing off the hallway walls until I hit the cold tile of the bathroom. I reach the sink just as the blood starts pouring. My nose is bleeding again, but this is not like the last time. This is a heavy, terrifying flow. It will not stop. I slide down the cabinets and sit on the cold floor, tilting my head back against the wall, watching the digital clock on my counter glow in the dark. 15 minutes pass. Then 20. Finally, the metallic taste in my throat begins to fade. The flow slows to a stop. I pull myself up using the towel rack and look at my reflection. There are deep, bruised circles under my eyes. My cheekbones look sharp, hollow. My skin is a sickly, translucent shade of gray. When did I start looking like a dying Victorian child? A rational, terrified voice in my brain screams at me to call an ambulance, to go to the emergency room immediately. But graduation is in 72 hours. I have a 3-page speech I have to memorize. If I go to the hospital, they will admit me. I will miss the ceremony. I will miss the one moment in my life where people have to sit and listen to what I have to say. I pick up my phone and text Maya. Woke up feeling much better. Going back to sleep. See you tomorrow. Then I open my digital photo gallery. I scroll past hundreds of pictures I have saved, mostly landscapes and photos with Maya, until I find a picture of Silas and me from last winter. We are standing on his porch. He is the only person looking directly at the camera. He is the only person standing close enough that our shoulders touch. I think about the text Maya sent me. If anything feels wrong, call your grandfather. I open my university profile settings. I navigate to the emergency contact portal. I delete my mother's name. I type in Silas's name and his cell phone number. I save the changes, just as a precaution. Then I drag myself back to bed, swallow the maximum dosage of painkillers, and stare into the dark. 3 more days. Just let me survive 3 more days. If you have ever felt entirely invisible to the exact people whose biological duty was to love and protect you. If you have ever been the cornerstone everyone leans on, but no one ever bothers to check for cracks, please comment the word invisible down below. I promise you I see you. I have lived in those shoes. And if you want to know what happened when I finally stepped up to that podium, stay with me. Because the events of that morning are burned into my soul until the day I die. One day before the ceremony, Silas calls me mid-morning while I am pacing the length of my tiny living room, reciting my speech aloud to my dying houseplant for the 100th time. Clara, my brave girl, are you ready for the big day tomorrow? I set my index cards down on the coffee table, rubbing my temples. As ready as I am ever going to be, Grandpa. Are you absolutely sure you are up for the drive? I know it takes 4 hours to get to the campus. A team of wild draft horses could not drag me away from that stadium tomorrow, he says, and I can hear the wide smile stretching his voice. I am packing my bags right now. I am driving down this evening and staying at that little motel near the university gates. I want to be parked and in my seat 2 hours early. My throat tightens uncomfortably. Grandpa, you really do not have to do all that. I want to do it, Clara. Besides, I need to see you. I need to hand you something in person. He pauses, and the line goes quiet except for the static. It is the gift. The one your grandmother, Cordelia, desperately wanted you to have. She secured it for you right before her heart gave out. She made me swear an oath to wait until you had your college degree in your hand. She knew you were going to achieve greatness, Clara. Long before you drew your first breath, she knew. I sink onto my couch, overwhelmed. I do not even know what to say to that, Grandpa. What exactly is the gift? You will find out tomorrow morning. Just know that your grandmother and I have believed in your brilliance since day one. Even when... He cuts himself off, clearing his throat. Even when what? I press, my heart beating faster. Even when the people who should have championed you forgot to do their jobs. The silence stretches between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Then he takes a deep breath. Clara, did your father ever confess to you that I offered to pay your entire university tuition? The world stops spinning for a fraction of a second. What? No, of course not. That is completely new information to me. My dad told me since I was a teenager that the family finances were tied up and they simply could not afford to help both me and Beatrice. Silas lets out a sound that is half sigh, half bitter, angry laugh. Is that the narrative Arthur spun for you? Grandpa, please, what are you talking about? Where did the money go? Tomorrow, he says, his voice incredibly gentle but firm. We are going to sit down and have a very long, very difficult conversation tomorrow afternoon after you get your diploma. But for tonight, I just want you to hear this and believe it in your bones. You are not alone, Clara. You have never been alone. I end the call feeling more unmoored and confused than I have in my entire life. Silas was a wealthy man. He had offered to pay my tuition. He had written the check. Where on earth did that money go? My mind races with horrifying implications, chasing the timeline in circles. My head begins to violently throb again, a warning bell in my skull. I force myself to stop thinking. I cannot afford a breakdown right now. Tomorrow is the summit of the mountain I have been climbing for 4 years. I just have to survive one more sunset. The morning of the graduation. I open my eyes to a world composed entirely of pain. The headache is no longer a localized pressure. It feels like my skull is trapped in an industrial vice, slowly being cranked shut. I blindly reach for my phone on the nightstand. The screen is blindingly bright. I have a new message from my mother. Just landed at the private airstrip. Have a spectacular graduation, sweetheart. We are incredibly proud of your achievements. Below the text is a high-resolution photo. The entire family standing in front of a gleaming private plane on a sun-drenched tarmac. Beatrice is wearing oversized designer sunglasses, pouting playfully for the camera. My father is holding a tropical drink, flashing a thumbs up. My mother is smiling a wide, carefree smile, looking absolutely radiant, as if she has not just actively abandoned her youngest child on the most monumental morning of her life. I stare at the image until my eyes burn. I do not type a reply. I lock the screen and drag my body out of bed. Maya arrives at my apartment at exactly 9 o'clock. She takes one look at my face as I open the door and drops her car keys. "Clara, what is wrong with your skin? You are literally the color of concrete. Are you bleeding internally?" I force a laugh that sounds like a dry cough. I am just terrified of public speaking. It is the adrenaline. Stop hovering. It is not just nerves. When is the last time you consumed actual calories? I had a large black coffee an hour ago. Caffeine is a chemical, not a food group, Clara. She practically forces me into the passenger seat of her car, shoves a protein bar into my hands. "You are going to eat that, or I am not turning the key in the ignition." I manage to chew and swallow exactly 3 bites before my stomach aggressively twists, threatening to reject it. I hide the rest of the bar in a napkin. When we pull up to the university grounds, the campus is an absolute hive of chaotic joy. Thousands of people are milling around. Grandparents holding massive bouquets of flowers, proud fathers adjusting their ties, mothers frantically snapping photos of their children in matching black gowns. The air is filled with laughter and the rustling of heavy academic robes. I keep my eyes glued to the pavement, unable to bear the sight of complete families celebrating together. Inside the massive staging tent behind the stadium, I pull my phone out of my pocket one last time. Another message from my mother. "Send us lots of videos of your speech. We are dying to see how it goes." They want the videos. They want the digital proof of my success to brag about to their friends, but they did not want to endure the minor inconvenience of actually sitting in a chair to witness it. A profound, freezing emptiness settles into the center of my chest. I am about to power down my phone when I open my university app one last time. I stare at my updated emergency contact list. Silas is there. I lock the screen and put the phone away. I peek through the heavy canvas flaps of the tent out into the stadium. The morning sun is already blazing hot. The sea of folding chairs is filling up rapidly. And then I spot him. Silas is sitting in the very center of the front row, wearing his best 3-piece wool suit despite the sweltering heat. He is sitting perfectly straight, an anchor in the chaos. Resting on his lap, clutched in his weathered hands, is a thick manila envelope. He catches me looking through the tent opening and raises a hand in a slow, proud wave. I wave back. For the first time all week, the crushing band around my chest loosens just enough to let me take a full, deep breath. "Clara?" A frantic stage manager with a clipboard taps my shoulder. "You're up in exactly 10 minutes. Please make your way to the stairs." 10 minutes. I can do this. I repeat the mantra in my head. Just walk up the stairs. Read the cards. Walk down. Do not pass out. The stadium holds over 5,000 people. The heat radiating off the artificial turf is oppressive. My heavy black graduation gown acts like a wearable sauna. The mortarboard cap feels like it is clamped onto my head with iron grips. The dean of the university approaches the podium. His voice echoes out of the towering speaker stacks. "And now, to deliver the commencement address, please welcome our valedictorian, Clara." The applause starts. It builds into a deafening roar. Maya is cheering so loudly from the front row I can actually distinguish her voice over the crowd. I put one foot in front of the other. I climb the 4 wooden steps to the massive stage. The stage lights, combined with the glaring morning sun, hit my eyes like physical blows. I walk to the wooden podium and grip the edges with white knuckles. Look down at the front row. Silas is beaming, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Maya is standing right next to him, her phone raised, recording every second. And right next to them are 2 reserved VIP seats with my family's name printed on paper signs taped to the backrests. Empty. Glaringly, agonizingly empty. I lean into the microphone. The feedback whines for a second before settling. Thank you to the faculty, the administration, and the families who gathered here today. The words are flowing automatically. I have drilled this speech so many times it is embedded in my muscle memory. I stand before you not just as an individual who managed to pass exams, but as a testament to the people who believed in me. I am reading the words, but something is shifting in reality. The wooden stage beneath my feet feels like it is made of water. It is tilting violently to the left. My peripheral vision turns a strange, sickly shade of yellow and then begins to shrink, tunneling inward to a single, hyper-focused point. The heavy microphone stand seems to slip through my fingers. I can hear my own voice echoing from the speakers, but it sounds like someone else is speaking. It sounds distorted, demonic, stretching out in slow motion. Believed in me when I did not believe in myself. A sudden, catastrophic explosion of pain detonates behind my left eye. It is not an ache. It is a blinding, white-hot severing of my senses. The sky above me spins. Through the rapidly closing tunnel of my vision, I see the expression on Silas's face morph from pure pride to absolute, screaming terror. I see Maya drop her phone, her mouth opening in a scream I cannot hear. I see the 2 empty reserve chairs. And then, the world blinks out of existence. My body collapses, hitting the hard wooden floorboards of the stage with a sickening thud. Distantly, as if from the bottom of a deep ocean, I hear the chaotic eruption of the crowd. 5,000 people gasping, shouting. Voices barking panicked orders. Call an ambulance. Is there a doctor in the stadium? Someone find her family immediately. I feel hands grabbing my shoulders. I feel someone slapping my cheek. Maya's voice, cracking with hysterics, is right next to my ear. Clara. Clara, please open your eyes. Squeeze my hand. Clara. Then, rough, warm hands replace hers. Silas. His ancient fingers are gripping my freezing hand so hard it hurts. I am right here, my brave girl. Grandpa is right here. I try to move my jaw. I try to tell him I am just tired, that I just need to lie down for a second, but my body has completely disconnected from my brain. The absolute darkness is rising up to swallow me. The very last conscious thing I process is the frantic voice of a paramedic shouting over the din. We are dialing her parents' numbers right now. Does anyone have an alternate contact? They are not going to answer, I think to myself. They are at the beach. And then I plunge into the void. The events of the next few hours are a piece of history I did not witness. Maya recounted the details to me much later, piecing the nightmare together when I was finally strong enough to hear the words. The paramedics arrived on the stage in under 5 minutes. I was entirely unresponsive. They rushed me to the nearest major trauma center. The emergency room was a blur of chaotic action. They threw me into a CT scanner, followed immediately by an MRI machine. With every passing image, the atmosphere in the room grew more grim. A neurosurgeon, still wearing scrubs from a previous operation, walked out into the waiting room to speak to Silas and Maya. She has a massive tumor pressing aggressively against her frontal lobe and optic nerve, the surgeon said, his voice clipped and serious. It is causing critical hemorrhaging. We have to open her skull and operate immediately. Maya dropped to her knees. Operate? Right now? Within the hour, the surgeon confirmed. But we need immediate legal consent from her next of kin. She is completely incapacitated. Maya frantically pulled my unlocked phone from my bag and scrolled to my parents' contact info. She called my mother. It rang 5 times and went straight to a generic voicemail. She called my father. Straight to voicemail. She called my sister. Voicemail. Please, Maya sobbed into the recording. This is Maya. Clara collapsed on the stage. She is in the neuro ward. She needs brain surgery immediately. You have to call us back right now. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. No response. The surgeons were growing agitated. Silas, his face carved out of granite, took his own phone out and dialed my father's private business line. Arthur answered on the 5th ring. The background noise was loud, announcements echoing over a terminal PA system. Dad, Arthur's voice was relaxed, annoyed. Listen, we are literally at the gate about to walk down the jet bridge. Clara collapsed in the middle of her speech, Silas said, his voice devoid of all emotion, cold and sharp as a blade. She has a brain tumor. They are wheeling her into emergency brain surgery in less than 30 minutes. The line went dead silent. The kind of silence where the world stopped spinning. Then, Arthur's voice returned. But it wasn't panicked. It was strangely, terrifyingly calm, calculating the logistics. Dad, we're about to board a private flight. It took months to coordinate this. Can you just handle the paperwork on your end? We will call the hospital the second we land. Maya told me she watched Silas's posture change. He seemed to grow taller, an ancient, furious deity. Your youngest daughter is about to have her skull cut open to save her life, Silas said, pronouncing every syllable with lethal precision. And you're asking me if I can handle the paperwork while you go on a vacation? Dad, please be reasonable. The flight to the island is 8 hours. By the time we turn around and get back, she will either be out of surgery or, well, there is nothing we can physically do from an airplane seat. Another long, terrible pause. Arthur. Silas's voice dropped to a terrifying whisper. I want you to listen to me very carefully. If you step onto that airplane, if you leave this soil while your child is bleeding in a hospital bed, do not ever attempt to contact me again. Consider yourself an orphan. But Arthur got on the plane. Eleanor got on the plane. Beatrice got on the plane. They prioritized the tropical resort over my survival. Because Silas was listed as my emergency contact in the university portal, the hospital legal team allowed him to sign the surgical release forms as my guardian. When the medical team wheeled my unconscious body through the double doors into the sterile, freezing operating room, I had exactly 2 people waiting anxiously in the fluorescent hallway. My grandfather and my best friend. My biological family was cruising at 40,000 feet, drinking champagne, leaving me to face the knife alone. I wake up. It does not feel like waking up from a sleep. It feels like clawing my way out of a deep, suffocating grave of mud. The very first thing my eyes manage to focus on is an expanse of blinding white. White drop ceiling tiles. White walls. White, starchy hospital sheets pulled up to my chest. The second thing I see is Silas. He is asleep in an uncomfortable plastic chair pulled flush against the rails of my bed. He is still wearing the wrinkled trousers of his formal suit, his head resting awkwardly on his hand. The third thing I see is Maya. She is curled into a tight ball on a tiny cot in the far corner of the room, still wearing the dress she wore to graduation, her face pale and etched with dark, purple shadows of exhaustion. I try to open my mouth to speak. My throat feels like it has been scrubbed with crushed glass and sand. I manage to make a pathetic, dry clicking sound. Instantly, Maya stirs. Her eyes fly open. She sees me looking at her. Clara. She scrambles off the cot, nearly tripping over her own feet, and practically throws herself at the side of my bed, tears instantly flooding her face. Oh my God, Clara. You are awake. You are here. The commotion wakes Silas. He blinks, confused for a fraction of a second, before his eyes lock onto mine. His face, usually so strong and stoic, completely crumbles into a map of absolute relief. My beautiful girl, he whispers, his voice cracking as he reaches out with a trembling hand to stroke my hair. My brave, brave girl. You fought so hard. I try to force my tongue to work. What happened to me? I manage to croak. Silas and Maya exchange a quick, heavy look. It is the specific kind of look that doctors give to the family right before delivering catastrophic news. You had a mass in your brain, Maya says, speaking very slowly, very carefully. A tumor. They rushed you into surgery right after you fell. They took it out, Clara. The doctors said you are going to recover. You are safe now. Surgery. My brain sluggishly tries to process the word. How long? 3 days, Silas answers gently. You have been in a medically induced coma for 3 days to let the swelling go down. I turn my heavy head to the left. I see my phone sitting on the bedside table, plugged into a charging cord. Where are my parents? I ask, my voice slightly stronger. Another loaded glance passes between my grandfather and my best friend. Clara, Maya says, chewing her bottom lip, maybe you should wait until you have some water and rest before we get into all of that. But I am already reaching out, my fingers clumsy and weak, grabbing the device. I unlock the screen. My thumb instinctively opens the social media app, and the universe delivers the final, crushing blow. Posted exactly 18 hours ago. A high-resolution, perfectly filtered photograph. My mother, my father, Beatrice, and Julian, all standing ankle-deep in pristine, glowing ocean water, holding colorful cocktails with little umbrellas. The sky is a perfect, cloudless blue. The caption reads, "Family trip in paradise." Finally, no stress and no drama. Just good vibes and sunshine. It has hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments from their country club friends gushing about how perfect they look. I swipe left to see the carousel of images. A photo of a lavish seafood dinner at a beachfront cafe. A picture of Beatrice showing off her diamond ring against the backdrop of a palm tree. A candid shot of my father laughing on a yacht. I scroll through 9 photos. There is not a single mention of my name. There is not a single prayer request or a sad face or an excuse for my absence. It is as if I have been erased from the family archives. Clara. Maya's voice is gentle, agonizingly soft. They know you are in here. Silas called your dad right before you went under the knife. I look up at my grandfather. His jaw is clenched so tight a muscle is ticking violently in his cheek. They know. I look back down at the screen. The caption burns into my retinas. No stress, no drama. That is all I am to these people. I am an inconvenience. A chore. A drama that ruins the aesthetic of their perfect lives. I lock the screen and drop the phone onto the blanket. I do not cry. I am entirely too hollowed out, too empty to produce a single tear. The rage and the sorrow cancel each other out, leaving nothing but a vast, freezing wasteland inside me. Over the next 4 days, my body slowly begins to knit itself back together. The head surgeon visits my room and delivers the miraculous news. The tumor they extracted was entirely benign. They caught it just before it could cause irreversible neurological damage. I will have a scar hidden under my hairline, and I will need months of physical therapy to regain my stamina, but I am going to survive. Through it all, I maintain complete digital silence. I do not update my social media. I do not leave an angry comment on Beatrice's vacation photos. I do not call my parents to demand an apology. I just exist in the sterile quiet of the hospital, letting the realization of my total independence settle into my bones. Silas is there every single morning when the sun comes up. Maya practically moves into the room, bringing me fresh clothes and terrible jokes. The nursing staff learns all of our names, assuming we are a small, eccentric chosen family. You absolutely have to eat more than 3 spoonfuls, Silas commands gently on the 5th evening, pushing a plastic container of lukewarm hospital soup toward my tray. I am not hungry, Grandpa. My stomach is still recovering from the meds. Clara, he says, leaning in with a mock stern expression, you will eat this entire bowl of soup right now, or I swear to heaven I will pick up that spoon and feed it to you while making airplane noises. A tiny, fragile smile actually breaks across my face. Almost. Later that evening, Maya heads back to her apartment to take a real shower, and Silas drifts off to sleep in his chair, a book resting on his chest. The room is quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning. I am finally completely alone with the echoing silence of my own thoughts. And that is when it happens. My phone, sitting on the tray table, suddenly lights up the dark room. It vibrates violently. Missed call from Arthur. It stops. Then it starts again. 5 missed calls from Arthur. Then a barrage of notifications. 20 missed calls from Arthur. A text from Beatrice. 10 missed calls from Eleanor. 65 missed calls in the span of 10 minutes. My heart begins to race, the monitor beside my bed picking up the spike in my pulse. The text messages flood the screen like a digital avalanche. Arthur, Clara, pick up the phone immediately. We have to talk. Arthur, this is an absolute emergency. Call me the second you read this. Arthur, Clara, why are you ignoring us? Answer your phone right now. Eleanor, sweetheart, please call your father. He is having a panic attack. Beatrice, what the hell did you tell Grandpa? You have completely ruined the trip. Dad is losing his mind. I scroll through the endless wall of desperate, frantic text messages. 65 calls. 23 texts. I read every single one. Not a single message asks how my surgery went. Not a single text asks if I am in pain, or if I am scared, or if I am even still alive. Not one message says, "We are so incredibly sorry we left you." Not one says, "We love you." Every single message says, "We need you to answer the phone right now." I gently tap Silas's knee to wake him. He blinks, sitting up straight. "Look at this," I whisper, turning the glowing screen toward him. Silas squints at the messages. His face instantly darkens. A storm gathers behind his eyes. "They figured it out," he says quietly, rubbing his jaw. "Figured what out, Grandpa? Why are they suddenly acting like the house is on fire?" He lets out a long, heavy sigh, the sound of a man carrying a massive burden. "Clara, they are not blowing up your phone because they suddenly realized what terrible parents they are. They are calling in a panic because of the conversation I had with your father while you were on the operating table. Because they finally realized what they are about to lose." My blood turns to ice water in my veins. "Grandpa, what are you talking about? What could they possibly lose?" He pulls his plastic chair closer to the edge of my bed and gently takes both of my hands in his. "It is finally time you knew the entire truth about your family." Silas takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the confession. "Over 2 decades ago, right before you were born into this world, your grandmother Cordelia and I made a decision. We marched down to the private wealth management bank and we opened a specialized, high-yield trust account in your name." "To pay for my university?" I ask, confused. "Not exactly," he shakes his head slowly. "We always assumed your parents would be responsible enough to cover your higher education. That is what we naively told ourselves. This specific account was something entirely different. It was designed to be a massive graduation gift. Seed capital for your entire adult life. Cordelia called it your liberation fund." "How much money are we talking about?" I ask, my heart hammering against my ribs. Silas hesitates for a fraction of a second. "Clara, it is enough capital to purchase a lovely home outright in cash. It is enough to start a major business or invest or travel the world for a decade. It is life-altering money." My brain struggles to process the magnitude of his words. Life-altering money. A trust fund. But wait. I pull my hands back slightly. When I was applying to colleges, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table. He looked me dead in the eye and told me that your investments had taken a massive hit. He said you simply did not have the liquidity to help with my tuition, and that I would have to take out loans and work if I wanted to go to school because Beatrice's private college was already draining the family accounts. The bitterness that washes over Silas's face is terrifying to witness. He looks suddenly ancient, his eyes burning with an old, deep-seated fury. "Is that the lie Arthur fed you?" he asks softly, dangerously. "Clara, your father came to my study 5 years ago. He handed me the financial breakdown for both of your universities. He asked me to cover the tuition for both of my granddaughters. I agreed without hesitation. I sat at my mahogany desk and I wrote 2 massive checks. One for Beatrice's education. One for your education." They were the exact same amount to the penny. The silence in the hospital room is so absolute it feels suffocating. I stare at him, my mind spinning violently out of control. Then where did my tuition money go, Grandpa? Where did that check go?" I do not know the exact itemized details, but I can certainly formulate a solid guess, he says darkly. He reaches into his inside jacket pocket, pulls out his smartphone, and taps the screen a few times. He holds it up for me to see. It is a secure digital scan of a certified bank statement from 5 years ago. I see 2 massive withdrawals originating from his account, cashed on the exact same Tuesday afternoon. "Your parents took both of those checks to the bank," Silas explains, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "They allocated Beatrice's portion to her university registrar." "And mine?" I whisper, though the answer is already coalescing in my mind. I think back to 4 years ago. I think about the sudden, incredibly lavish kitchen renovation my parents commissioned. The imported Italian marble countertops. I think about the sudden influx of rare designer handbags my mother started carrying to her country club lunches. I think about the brand new luxury sports car my father leased. They spent my college tuition on themselves. I say the words out loud, tasting the bile in the back of my throat. "I believe they did," Silas confirms solemnly. And this liberation fund? This trust Cordelia set up? Did they know about that? Absolutely not. I never breathed a word of it to Arthur or Eleanor. I knew, Clara. Even when you were just a toddler, I watched the insidious way they favored your sister and treated you like an inconvenience. That trust fund was legally structured to bypass your parents completely. The bank is under strict orders to transfer the assets directly into your personal control the moment you present your college diploma. But now they know about it. I stated as a fact, the pieces of the puzzle snapping violently together. Yes, when I was on the phone with your father while you were bleeding in the operating room, I lost my temper. I told him that if he did not turn that plane around, I was going to ensure you received every single cent of Cordelia's estate and that he would be written out of my will entirely. Silas sighs, rubbing his eyes. Perhaps I should not have weaponized the money in that moment, but I was consumed by rage. I wanted to hurt him where he actually feels it. In his wallet. That is why the 65 missed calls. That is why they are panicking. I lean back against my pillows, staring blankly at the ceiling. They are not frantically calling because their youngest daughter survived a brain tumor. They are calling because they are terrified I am about to become financially independent. They are terrified they are going to lose access to Grandpa's fortune. They arrive at the hospital the very next afternoon. I know it is them long before they enter the room. I can hear the sharp, impatient clicking of my mother's designer heels echoing rapidly down the linoleum corridor, accompanied by her voice, aggressively loud and entitled. Which room is it? We are looking for the Donovan room. Clara Donovan. Where is she? Maya is sitting in the chair by the window. She immediately stands up, her body language defensive. Do you want me to go get security? She asks quietly. Stay, I reply, my voice shockingly steady. Please, do not leave me alone with them. Maya nods sharply and crosses her arms, planting her feet like a bodyguard. The heavy wooden door bursts open. Eleanor sweeps into the room first. Her face is meticulously arranged into a mask of perfect, frantic maternal devastation. Clara, oh my God, my sweet baby girl, we rushed back as fast as humanly possible. She practically lunges toward the bed, leaning over the rails to wrap her arms around my shoulders. I do not lift my arms. I remain completely stiff, a corpse enduring an unwanted embrace. You rushed back as fast as humanly possible. I repeat her words slowly, letting them hang in the sterile air. It has been 5 entire days since I nearly died on that stage. The commercial flights off the island were completely booked due to the storm season, she stammers, pulling back slightly, her mask slipping just a fraction. I saw your photo feed yesterday, Mom. The one of you holding a giant margarita on a yacht while I was unconscious on a ventilator. Eleanor's face flushes a deep, ugly shade of crimson. We were just trying to maintain a brave face. We were trying to make the best of an incredibly traumatic and difficult situation. Arthur shuffles into the room behind her. He looks genuinely exhausted, the bags under his eyes dark and heavy, but he cannot bring himself to look me in the eye. He stares fixedly at the 4-bag dripping fluid into my arm. Then Beatrice enters. I actually let out a dry, incredulous laugh. She is holding 3 massive, high-end boutique shopping bags in her left hand. She literally stopped to go duty-free shopping before coming to see her sister in the neuro ward. Hey, Clara, she says casually, dropping the heavy bags onto the visitor sofa. She refuses to step closer to the medical equipment. Wow, you look way better than I was expecting. Honestly. Maya lets out a sound from the corner of the room that is half gasp, half feral growl. I do not look at Maya, but I can feel the sheer, unadulterated hatred radiating from her across the room. Beatrice, I say, my voice eerily calm and flat. I had my skull sawed open. They removed a tumor from my brain. I know, it is completely insane, right? She waves her hand dismissively, checking her reflection in the dark window glass. Anyway, we had to cut the celebration trip entirely short, so you know you're welcome. The room descends into a sickening, suffocating silence. Even Arthur winces at Beatrice's words. Eleanor clears her throat loudly, attempting to take control of the narrative. Clara, sweetheart, we need to have a very serious discussion as a family. She turns and glares pointedly at Maya. Privately. Maya does not move a single muscle. Clara wants me here, she says, her voice cold as ice. Eleanor's eyes narrow. Young lady, this is a private family matter involving estates and… Maya stays, I interrupt, my voice cracking like a whip. Maya was sitting in that chair when I woke up terrified and alone. Maya held my hand while the doctors shaved my head. Maya stays. If you want her to leave, you can leave with her. Eleanor's lips thin into a furious, straight line. She is about to launch into a screaming tirade when the door handle turns again. Silas walks into the room. The ambient temperature seems to instantly drop 10 degrees. Arthur physically takes a step backward, bumping into the wall. Dad, Arthur starts, holding his hands up defensively. Douglas, Silas says, his voice dangerously quiet, slicing through the tension like a scalpel. Pamela. Beatrice. He does not even look at them as he walks past. He comes straight to my bedside and gently places his warm hand over mine. I see you all finally managed to find a gap in your incredibly busy social calendar to visit the hospital. Eleanor steps forward, her hands on her hips. Now listen here, Silas, you have no right to. Silas whips his head around, his eyes blazing with a fury that actually makes Eleanor flinch. Do not speak. Do not utter a single syllable to me. If you have ever had toxic family members come rushing back into your life, not because they realized their mistakes, not because they genuinely missed your presence, but because they suddenly realized you possess something they desperately need, drop the phrase "they came back" in the comments. I know that highly specific, sickening feeling. I know exactly how it hollows out your soul to realize you are nothing but a resource to them. But I promise you, what happened next in this tiny hospital room shifted the trajectory of my entire existence. I had been waiting 22 years to say the words I was about to say. So listen closely, because this is the moment the chains finally broke. Arthur attempts to play the role of the rational peacemaker. Dad, please, can we just lower the temperature in the room and discuss this rationally? Rationally? Silas repeats the word as if it tastes like poison. Your youngest daughter collapsed on a stage in front of 5,000 people. She had a bleeding mass in her brain. The emergency room administrators called your phones 47 times in the span of an hour. We were trapped on an airplane, Arthur pleads, wiping sweat from his forehead. You were not on an airplane. You were sitting in the VIP lounge at the gate. I spoke to you directly on the phone, Arthur. I told you she was going into surgery. You actively chose to hand your boarding pass to the gate agent and walk onto that flight. Eleanor cannot help herself. She steps into Silas's personal space. Silas, you are entirely out of line. This is a private matter concerning our immediate family. Clara is my blood. She is my family, Silas roars, his voice finally breaking its quiet restraint, echoing off the tile walls. And for 22 years, I have stood by and watched you two treat this brilliant, beautiful girl like she is a stray dog that wandered into your pristine house. That is an outrageous lie, Eleanor shrieks, her carefully maintained composure shattering into a million pieces. We love Clara. You love what Clara provides for you. There is a massive psychological difference. Silas turns slowly and locks eyes with my father. Tell me right now, Arthur. Look me in the eye and tell me the exact date of Clara's birth. Arthur freezes. He blinks rapidly, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. It's in March. No, wait, late April. It is October 15th, I say, my voice barely above a whisper, echoing in the devastating silence. My birthday is October 15th, Dad. He looks down at his expensive Italian leather shoes, his face burning with absolute shame. Silas is merciless. He continues the interrogation. What is her favorite piece of literature? What is the name of her absolute best friend sitting right across the room? What is the exact title of the career position she accepted for the fall? Silence. Suffocating, damning silence. Maya's jaw is clenched so tight I can see the muscle jumping. She knows the answer to every single one of those questions. She has known them since we were 18 years old. Beatrice dramatically rolls her eyes, clearly bored by the emotional display. Grandpa, this is honestly ridiculous. We did not fly all the way back from a luxury resort just to play a guilt-tripping game of 20 questions. No, Silas says, his voice returning to that terrifyingly quiet octave. You flew back here in a panic because you heard the word money. The word hits the room like a detonating explosive. Eleanor's face instantly drains of all color, turning a sickly shade of white. We came rushing back because Clara was in critical medical condition. She lies, her voice trembling. You came back because I explicitly told Arthur that Clara was going to receive her entire inheritance directly from the bank, completely bypassing your authority. Silas's eyes are as hard and cold as diamonds. Suddenly, after 4 years of actively ignoring her existence, stealing her tuition money, and leaving her to fend for herself, you are deeply, passionately concerned about her welfare. That inheritance money legally belongs to the collective family structure, Eleanor hisses, stepping forward. That money belongs to Clara. Silas raises his voice, taking a protective step toward my bed. Her grandmother, Cordelia, secured those funds for her future. Not to fund Beatrice's obscenely expensive destination wedding. Not to pay for your ridiculous kitchen remodeling projects. Eleanor opens her mouth to scream, then snaps it shut. I lie in my bed and I watch the rapid, desperate mathematical calculations happening behind her eyes. I watch her realize that Silas holds all the power, and something deep inside my chest goes completely cold. You really want to know the ugly truth, Silas? Eleanor's voice suddenly changes. The polished, societal mask completely melts away, revealing something raw, bleeding, and ancient underneath. Fine. You want to drag all the skeletons out of the closet? Let's have it all out in the open. Arthur reaches out, grabbing her elbow in a panic. Pam, stop. Do not do this right now. She violently shakes his hand off her arm. No, Arthur. He wants to paint me as the wicked villain of this family. Let him hear the truth. She turns slowly and looks directly at me. Her eyes are brimming with wet, hot tears, but they are not tears of guilt. They are tears of profound, historic resentment. You want to know the exact reason why I have always kept my emotional distance from you, Clara? Because every single time I look at your face, I see her. Who? I ask, though a sickening dread is already forming in my stomach. Cordelia. My mother spits the name like it is a venomous curse. Your precious, perfect grandmother. The woman who spent 30 agonizing years making me feel like I was absolute garbage, like I was never good enough to marry her golden son. Silas goes completely rigid. The air in the room feels thick, hard to breathe. The very first time Arthur brought me to this family estate, Eleanor continues, her voice shaking with decades of suppressed rage, Cordelia looked me up and down like I was dirt she had scraped off her expensive shoes. 26 years of passive-aggressive, snide comments. 26 years of pulling Arthur aside and asking if he was absolutely sure about marrying someone of my pedigree. 26 years of trying to prove my worth and never, ever being enough for her impossible standards. I cannot find the air to speak. I just stare at the woman who gave birth to me. And then her heart gave out. And she died. Eleanor lets out a sharp, hysterical, bitter laugh. And I stood at her grave and I thought, finally, the ghost is gone. Finally, I can be accepted as the matriarch. Finally, I can breathe in my own house. But then, a few months later, you were born, Clara. And as you grew up, you morphed into her exact replica. You have her exact same judgmental eyes. Her same arrogant, stubborn chin. Her same holier-than-thou attitude. You are a walking, talking ghost of the woman who ruined my youth. That is not Clara's fault, Maya says sharply from the corner, stepping forward. I know that. Eleanor screams at Maya, her voice cracking. Then, quieter, her shoulders slumping. I know that logically. But every single time I looked at my baby girl, I saw Cordelia staring back at me, judging every decision I made. I couldn't hold you. I couldn't bond with you. I just couldn't. She breaks off, burying her face in her manicured hands, her shoulders shaking with violent sobs. I sit there in the sterile bed, hooked up to N4, and I analyze my own emotions. I should feel a deep well of sympathy for her. Part of me does recognize the tragedy of her trauma. But a much larger, much louder part of my brain thinks I was a literal infant. I was an innocent child. I spent 22 entire years lying awake in the dark, wondering what was so fundamentally broken inside of me that my own mother could not muster the ability to love me. I wondered if I was too loud, too quiet, too needy, too independent. And the actual answer, all along, was simply because I share the genetic facial structure of a woman I never even met. "Mom," I say, my voice slow and measured, trying to cut through her sobbing. "I am not Cordelia." "I know," she whimpers into her hands. "Do you?" I press, my tone hardening. "Because I have spent my entire life paying off a massive emotional debt that I did not incur." She does not answer. She just continues to weep. And that silence tells me everything I will ever need to know. I push myself up, ignoring the sharp pull of the surgical staples in my scalp. My physical body is weak, exhausted, but my spirit has never felt more incredibly steady. "Mom, look at me," I command. She slowly lowers her hands. "I understand now. I understand that you endured a deeply painful, toxic relationship with your mother-in-law. You felt belittled and judged, and that caused a profound wound in your psyche." A desperate, pathetic flicker of hope sparks in her red eyes, thinking I am about to offer her total absolution. But I continue, lowering my voice so she has to strain to hear me, that trauma is not my fault, and it is not my responsibility to carry. The hope in her eyes instantly dies, replaced by a cold shock. For 22 years, I have done everything perfectly. I maintained perfect academic scores. I stayed out of trouble. I worked 3 exhausting jobs so you would not have to spend a single dime on my survival. I showed up to every single family holiday, every tedious country club event. I managed the logistics for every crisis, every party, every meltdown Beatrice ever had. "Clara, please," Eleanor starts, reaching for my blanket. I am not finished speaking, I say, my voice radiating an absolute, unshakable authority. I did all of that exhausting labor because I falsely believed that if I just tried hard enough, if I made myself useful enough, you would finally look at me and see a daughter. You would finally love me the way you effortlessly love Beatrice. Beatrice shifts uncomfortably by the sofa, looking away from me for the first time. But I was entirely wrong. I was playing a game I was rigged to lose from birth. Because you were never going to see Clara. You were always going to project Cordelia onto me. I slowly turned my gaze to my father. "And you, Arthur. You stood by and you watched this psychological abuse happen every single day for 22 years, and you never said a damn word." He flinches as if I have physically struck him across the face. "Clara, I didn't know how to handle it." The tension in the house was, "How to what?" I demand, my anger finally breaking through the surface. How to stand up and protect your own child. How to pull your wife aside and demand to know why she visibly recoiled every time your youngest daughter walked into the room. It was an incredibly complicated dynamic, he stammers, looking desperately at the floor. "It is not complicated at all." I shake my head, feeling a wave of disgust. "You are a coward. You chose the path of least resistance to keep your wife happy. And the toll for that peaceful path was sacrificing my childhood." Silas reaches out and squeezes my hand tightly, a silent transfer of strength. I look at each of them, burning their reactions into my memory. Eleanor, crying quietly, drowning in her own victimhood. Arthur, staring at the linoleum, crushed by the weight of his own passivity. Beatrice, standing with her arms crossed defensively over her chest, annoyed that the spotlight is off of her. "I do not hate you," I say, letting the truth of the words settle in the room. "Any of you. Hate requires an emotional investment I simply do not possess anymore. But I absolutely refuse to keep pretending this dynamic is acceptable. I resign from the position of the invisible workhorse." "What exactly are you saying?" Arthur asks, his voice trembling with genuine fear. "What do you want from us?" I take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs completely. "I want you to look at me and see a distinct human being. Not a ghost of the past. Not a convenient burden. Not an unpaid assistant whose sole purpose is to lubricate your lives. And if you are incapable of doing that," I meet his terrified eyes holding the gaze, "then I will actively mourn the family I always wished I had, and I will walk out that door and build a new one from scratch." The silence in the hospital room is so profound I can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. I turn my head to Silas. I want to discuss Cordelia's gift now, I say clearly. He nods solemnly. He reaches into the inner pocket of his heavy wool jacket and extracts the thick manila envelope he had been holding in his lap at the graduation ceremony. This legally belongs to you, Clara, he says, his voice thick with emotion. Your grandmother established this fund 25 years ago. It has been sitting in a high-yield account, generating compound interest ever since. He places the heavy envelope onto my hospital tray. Do not open it right now, he advises gently. I rest my hand on the thick paper. I know exactly what you three are thinking right now, I say, turning back to my parents and sister. You are calculating the odds. You are wondering if I am going to share this windfall with the family. You are wondering if I am going to bail out Beatrice's extravagant destination wedding or fund the new summer house renovation. Eleanor opens her mouth, a desperate plea forming on her lips, but she stops herself. I am not going to give you a single penny. Clara, Beatrice finally breaks her silence, her voice dripping with venom and indignation. That is incredibly selfish of you. We are your blood. Grandmother would have wanted that money to benefit the entire family. She wanted me to have my fair share of it. Me? You are seriously using the word family right now? I let out a dry, hacking laugh that hurts my chest. You are deploying that word after you literally posted Sunset Beach selfies with champagne flutes while a surgeon was sawing my skull open? Beatrice's face flushes a dark, angry red. I didn't know the medical situation was actually that critical. Because you never bothered to answer the phone or ask. I state it as a simple, undeniable fact. She completely falls silent, unable to argue with reality. I look back at my mother. I am not taking this money out of spite or a desire to ruin your lives. I am taking it because it was gifted to me. Because Cordelia knew, even before I was born, that I was going to need a way to escape this house. She wanted me to have options. She wanted me to be completely independent from people who only view me as an afterthought. What happens to us now? Arthur asks, his voice breaking. Are we just supposed to accept that we have completely lost you? You lost me a decade ago, Dad. My voice softens, the anger bleeding out, leaving only a profound sadness. You lost me the day you stopped showing up to my parent-teacher conferences. You lost me the day you let me start paying my own rent while funding Beatrice's luxury lifestyle. You lost me the day you let me become a ghost in my own home. I take a deep, stabilizing breath. But I am not bolting the door permanently shut. If any of you want to be a part of my adult life, really, truly in my life, you are going to have to do the work to earn access to it. You have to prove to me that you see Clara. Not Cordelia's ghost. Not Beatrice's understudy. Just me. And if we try? Eleanor's voice is painfully small, like a frightened child. If we put in the effort, then we can attempt to start over, I reply cautiously. Very slowly. With massive, non-negotiable boundaries in place. What kind of boundaries are we talking about? I look her dad in the eye, unflinching. I will inform you of the terms when I decide I am ready to speak to you again. Do not contact me until then. Beatrice is the first one to break. She aggressively snatches her high-end shopping bags off the sofa, her face contorted into a mask of pure, spoiled rage. This is absolutely insane. You are actively choosing to rip this family apart over a bank account. This has never been about the money, Beatrice, I say tiredly. Really? She sneers. Because it sounds a lot like you are just holding a grudge because we went on a trip. I nearly died on a stage, Beatrice. My brain was bleeding. And you went duty-free shopping. I point at the bags in her hands. She freezes, her eyes darting to the glossy paper bags. I am not pointing that out to manipulate you or make you feel guilty. I am pointing it out because you desperately need a harsh dose of reality. You need to mentally put yourself in my shoes. Imagine waking up attached to a ventilator, terrified, and seeing your sister posing in front of the ocean. Her lower lip begins to tremble violently. For a single, fleeting second, I actually see the thick armor of her narcissism crack behind her eyes. Then she turns on her heel and storms out of the room. The heavy wooden door clicks shut behind her. Eleanor is crying again. But this time, it is different. It is not the loud, theatrical weeping of a victim. It is a quiet, desperate, ugly crying. Real tears. The kind of sorrow that absolutely cannot be faked for an audience. I am so sorry, she whispers, burying her face in her hands. I am so incredibly sorry, Clara. I was wrong. I was so fundamentally wrong. I know you were, Mom. But an apology does not possess a time machine. I do not know how to fix a lifetime of damage. Neither do I, she whispers back. Not yet, I add softly. I pause, letting the weight of the moment settle. But if you genuinely want a relationship with me in the future, you have to seek professional help. You need to sit in a therapist's office and violently unpack whatever Cordelia did to you, so you can permanently stop projecting that trauma onto my face. She nods slowly, wiping the mascara-stained tears from her cheeks. She turns and walks out of the room without uttering another word, leaving a heavy, complicated silence in her wake. Now it is just me, my father, Silas, and Maya. Arthur sits down heavily in the plastic chair beside my bed, looking like a man who has just survived a shipwreck. Clara, he says, his voice thick with gravel and regret. I completely failed my core duty as a father to protect you. Yes, I say simply, offering no comfort. Yes, you did. I constantly told myself you were so inherently strong that you didn't need my protection or my guidance, but I realize now that was just a cowardly excuse to avoid confronting my wife. It was easier to let you suffer than to rock the boat. He looks up at me, and for the first time in perhaps my entire life, he really, truly looks at me. He sees the exhaustion, the pain, and the iron resolve. I cannot build a time machine and undo 22 years of cowardice. But can I at least try to be a better man moving forward? I study the deep lines etched into his face. I search his eyes for deception and find only a genuine, crushing remorse. Call me next Tuesday, I say finally. Just call me on the phone. Ask me how I am feeling and actually sit in silence and listen to my answer. He nods vigorously, stands up, and squeezes my hand once, very gently. I will call. I promise. Then he, too, walks out the door, leaving me to begin the grueling process of rebuilding my life. 2 full weeks later, I am officially discharged from the hospital with a clean bill of health and a neat line of healing staples hidden beneath my hair. The neurological team calls my rapid recovery a medical miracle. I call it a violent, necessary rebirth. I absolutely do not move back into my childhood bedroom. I utilize a very small, conservative fraction of Cordelia's Liberation Fund to break the lease on my terrible apartment and rent a beautiful, sunlit one-bedroom loft near the middle school where I am contracted to begin teaching literature in the fall. The apartment is modest but perfect. It has exposed brick walls, a tiny functional kitchen, and a large bay window that overlooks a quiet, tree-lined street. It is the first space in my life that belongs entirely to me. The social fallout within my family happens with breathtaking speed. Beatrice aggressively blocks my phone number and removes me from every single one of her social media platforms. I hear through the grapevine that her new online biography reads, "Some toxic people simply do not appreciate the value of family loyalty." I screenshot it when a mutual friend sends it to me, and I forward it to Maya. Maya responds with an unbroken string of middle finger emojis and a gif of a dumpster fire. 2 days after I move into my new loft, I receive a frantic phone call from Maya. She sounds almost unhinged with gleeful vindication. "Clara, you are not going to believe the absolute chaos unfolding downtown." "What is happening?" I ask, unpacking a box of books. "Julian, Beatrice's golden ticket fiancé. He heard the entire unvarnished story about the graduation collapse and the hospital abandonment from his mother, who heard it from a nurse who runs in the same country club circles." Maya is practically vibrating through the phone speaker. "He is packing his bags, Clara. He told his parents he is seriously reconsidering marrying into a family that abandons their bleeding children to go on vacation." I sit down on the floor, holding a stack of classic novels. I do not feel a surge of triumphant victory. I just feel an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. "That is not what I wanted to happen, Maya. I did not want to ruin her life." "I know you didn't," Maya says, her tone softening. "You are too good for vengeance. But karma is a terrifyingly efficient accountant." A week later, I check a mutual friend's feed. All the lavish engagement banquet photos have been systematically scrubbed from the internet. The engagement announcement itself has vanished into the digital ether. Later that afternoon, Eleanor sends me a single text message. Beatrice is completely devastated. Her entire life plan is falling apart. I hope you are finally happy with what you have done. I sit by my bay window and stare at the glowing text message for a very long time, watching the sun slowly set over the city skyline. Then, my fingers steady, I type back. I take absolutely no joy in my sister's deep pain. But I am also not responsible for the consequences of her own cruel actions. She does not reply. Arthur, to his absolute credit, does call me on the following Tuesday. Exactly at 5 o'clock in the evening, just as I requested. Hi, Clara. His voice is incredibly hesitant, walking on eggshells. Hi, Dad. How are you feeling today? Are the headaches fading? Much better, I say honestly. I am still exhausted by mid-afternoon, but the pain is mostly gone. There is a long, slightly awkward pause on the line. Then he asks, "What did you make for dinner last night?" I actually smile, a genuine, warm smile. It is such a profoundly small, mundane question, but he has never once in his life bothered to ask it before. I made a massive pot of spicy pasta, I tell him. Maya came over and we ate it on the floor because my dining chairs haven't been delivered yet. That sounds really nice, Clara. It is awkward. It is incredibly stilted, like two strangers trying to learn a new language. But it is a genuine foundation. For right now, in this moment, it is enough. 3 months later, the suffocating heat of summer has broken, giving way to a crisp, golden autumn. I am standing in the center of my brand new classroom, surrounded by the smell of floor wax and fresh paper. I am arranging 26 desks into neat, collaborative pods. 8th grade literature and history. 26 energetic, complicated young minds will flood through that wooden door on Monday morning. Maya is standing on a wobbly chair, helping me hang educational posters. Or rather, she is actively criticizing my aesthetic choices while loudly crunching on my bag of potato chips. "You need to move the Shakespeare poster a little to the left," she dictates, waving a chip in the air. "No, your other left. It looks totally lopsided." I sigh, dropping my hands to my hips. "Remind me again why I maintain a friendship with you?" "Because I am an absolute delight, and because I held your hand while they shaved a bald spot into your head," she shoots back, hopping down from the chair. I cannot argue with that flawless logic. The classroom is slowly starting to look like a reflection of my own mind. I have installed tall wooden bookshelves I sourced from a local antique market. I built a comfortable reading corner with a soft rug and mismatched, colorful floor pillows. On the back wall, there is a massive cork bulletin board with large, cut-out letters that read, "Every single voice matters here." My phone vibrates in my back pocket. I pull it out. It is Silas. "How is the grand classroom setup coming along, Professor?" he asks, his voice booming warmly. "Almost finished, Grandpa. Maya is currently eating all my snacks and barking orders. Are we still confirmed for our Sunday dinner?" "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," he chuckles. I hear him settle into his leather armchair over the phone. "Your grandmother would be so incredibly proud to see you right now, Clara. Building your own sanctuary. Shaping your own independent life." My eyes sting with a sudden, happy tears. "I really wish I had gotten the chance to know her, Grandpa. You two would have been an absolutely terrifying, unstoppable force together," he says fondly. He pauses, and the tone of his voice shifts, becoming quiet and reverent. "Speaking of Cordelia, I was digging through the cedar trunks in the attic yesterday, and I found something completely unexpected. A sealed envelope. It is a handwritten letter she penned 25 years ago, explicitly addressed to my future granddaughter." I grip the edge of my teacher's desk, my breath hitching in my throat. "What?" "Grandpa, she wrote that before my parents were even married. Before I was even conceived. She possessed a very rare kind of intuition, Clara. She just knew you were coming." "What does the letter say?" I ask, my voice trembling. "That is entirely for you to discover. I will bring it with me to dinner on Sunday." After he disconnects the call, I slowly sink into my padded desk chair. The chair I will sit in every single day for the next academic year. Maya plops into one of the tiny student desks in the front row, looking at me with concern. "Are you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." Cordelia wrote me a letter, I whisper, staring into the distance. She wrote it before I was even born. Maya's eyes widen in absolute shock. Clara, that is honestly the most beautiful, amazing thing I have ever heard. Yeah. I look around my meticulously organized classroom, taking in the space, the life I am actively constructing from the ashes of my past. Outside the large pane windows, the sun is beginning to set, casting long, golden beams of light across the linoleum floor, illuminating the floating specks of dust. For the first time in months, perhaps for the first time in my entire existence, I feel a deep, resonant certainty that I am standing exactly where the universe intends me to be. Exactly 1 month after the start of the school semester, on a quiet, rainy Sunday afternoon, there is a hesitant knock on the heavy door of my apartment. I open it, expecting a package delivery, and find Arthur standing in the hallway. He is wearing a damp trench coat, holding a large, slightly battered cardboard box in his arms. "Hi, Clara," he says, looking intensely nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I blink in surprise. "Dad, I wasn't expecting you to come by today. I know. I should have called first. He tightens his grip on the heavy box. "May I please come inside out of the rain?" I step aside, holding the door open. He walks into my loft, his eyes scanning the space, taking in the details of my independent life. He sees the thriving potted plants lining the windowsill. He sees the framed photographs on the floating shelves, a picture of Maya and me screaming with joy at graduation, a candid shot of Silas and me laughing over coffee, and a corkboard pinned with colorful drawings and thank you notes from my 8th grade students. "You have made this a truly beautiful home, Clara." It feels incredibly warm. "Thank you," I say cautiously. He gently sets the damp cardboard box down on my small kitchen island. "I brought you something. Something very important." "What is inside?" I ask, stepping closer. "Open it and see." I reach out and pull back the overlapping cardboard flaps. Inside the box, wrapped in protective tissue paper, is a treasure trove of history. There are thick, leather-bound photo albums, a collection of vintage, annotated literature books, a silver locket, and a delicate, hand-embroidered silk handkerchief. "These are Cordelia's personal belongings," I whisper, my fingers hovering reverently over the delicate fabric. "Your mother was gathering them up. She was going to throw the entire box into the incinerator behind the estate," Arthur says, his voice thick with shame, unable to meet my eyes. I couldn't allow her to erase history like that. I stepped in and took them. I lift the silk handkerchief out of the box. There are tiny, incredibly detailed blue flowers stitched along the scalloped edges. In the bottom right corner, the initials CD are embroidered in gold thread. "Dad," I say, my voice cracking with emotion. "I honestly do not know what to say to you. I know I cannot mathematically fix 22 years of neglect, Clara." His voice is rough, breaking under the weight of his own profound regrets. "I know I failed you in a million microscopic ways that can never be undone. But I wanted you to have these artifacts. I wanted you to physically hold the proof of where your spirit comes from." I gently set the handkerchief back into the box and look directly at my father. He looks drastically older than I remember. The polished, untouchable aura of the wealthy patriarch is completely gone, replaced by the tired, uncertain posture of a man realizing the ultimate cost of his cowardice. "I am absolutely not standing in your living room asking for your immediate forgiveness," he says quietly, a single tear tracking down his weathered cheek. "I am simply asking you for the grace of a chance to prove I can be a better man." I stand there in the quiet loft, listening to the rain drum against the window glass. I think about all the agonizing years of deafening silence. All the missed birthday cakes, the empty auditorium seats, the stolen college funds. But I also think about the Tuesday evening phone calls. Awkward, stilted, terrifyingly vulnerable, but absolutely consistent, every single week without fail. "Okay," I say finally, the word hanging heavy in the air. "Okay, Dad. You can try." I pause, hardening my gaze. But trying means actively showing up in the trenches. It means supporting me when it is difficult, not just when it fits seamlessly into your schedule. He nods rapidly, swallowing hard, swiping a hand across his eyes. "I completely understand the terms. I offer him a tiny, fragile smile. Would you like a cup of hot coffee? It is freezing out there. He smiles back, a look of profound relief washing over his features. I would love nothing more in this world. 6 months have passed since the day my life imploded on that graduation stage. I am sitting behind my heavy wooden desk long after the final dismissal bell has rung. The school corridors are completely silent. The classroom is empty now. 26 chairs tucked neatly under 26 desks. 26 unique, complicated universes. 26 children who will walk back through that door tomorrow morning, expecting me to teach them not just how to read literature, but how to find the courage to project their own voices into the world. A soft, hesitant knock sounds at the door frame. Miss Donovan? It is Leo. He is a 13-year-old boy who sits in the very back row. He is incredibly brilliant, but paralyzingly shy. He rarely speaks above a whisper and constantly hides behind his oversized hooded sweatshirts. Come on in, Leo. What can I do for you? I ask, setting down my red grading pen. He shuffles into the room, his eyes darting nervously around the empty space. Can I ask you a personal question? Of course you can. Have a seat. He drops his heavy backpack and stands by my desk, twisting the drawstrings of his hoodie around his fingers. Did you ever go through a phase where you felt like nobody in the entire world actually saw you? Like you were completely invisible in a crowded room? My heart violently clenches inside my chest, recognizing the specific, terrifying ache in his young eyes. Yes, I tell him, my voice completely devoid of teacherly condescension. Yes, Leo. For a very, very long time, I felt exactly like I was a ghost haunting my own life. What did you do to fix it? He asks, his voice trembling with desperation. I lean back in my chair, thinking carefully about the magnitude of my answer. First, I found a few rare people who possess the capacity to truly see me. My grandfather. My best friend. I held onto them like life rafts. And then, eventually, I reach up and gently tap my index finger against my own chest. Eventually, I learned how to look in the mirror and truly see myself. That is it? He asks, sounding slightly disappointed. Leo, I promise you, learning to see your own value is infinitely harder than it sounds. I smile, a warm, knowing smile. But once you finally recognize your own inherent, undeniable worth, you completely stop needing everyone else to validate your existence. You become bulletproof. He processes the words slowly, his posture straightening just a fraction of an inch. Thank you, Miss Donovan. Have a good weekend. You too, Leo. I will see you on Monday. After he disappears down the hallway, I remain seated at my desk for a long time as the room grows dim. I unlock my phone and open a digitized photograph I look at whenever the old ghosts try to creep back into my mind. It is a picture of me when I was 6 years old, holding my grandmother's hand. Silas found it buried at the bottom of the box Arthur brought me. It is a physically impossible photograph, composed of 2 different images seamlessly spliced together by a professional editor. In the picture, Cordelia is smiling down at me, her eyes brimming with absolute adoration, looking at me as if I am the most precious, vital entity in the entire universe. For 22 years, I falsely believed that love was a currency you had to bleed to earn. I thought it was a prize you won through endless sacrifice, through shrinking yourself, through being universally useful. I know the truth now. Love is simply the act of showing up. Love is the person who refuses to leave the waiting room when the surgeon is operating. And I have finally learned that I do not need to keep setting my own soul on fire just to prove to toxic people that I am worthy of feeling their warmth. I know my own profound worth now. That is enough. In fact, it is more than enough. Exactly 1 year after the graduation ceremony, my phone vibrates on my desk while I am grading a stack of history essays. I glance at the screen. It is a number I have not seen pop up in 12 long months. Beatrice. I drop my red pen. I stare at the glowing screen. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, I slide my finger across the glass and bring the phone to my ear. Clara? Her voice is a frail, trembling whisper. It sounds smaller and more fragile than I have ever heard it in my entire life. Can we please just talk for a minute? I lean back in my chair, looking out the window at the spring rain. I am listening. Julian officially left me. For real this time, there is no coming back. She lets out a laugh, but it is a hollow, terrifyingly empty sound. It turns out his powerful, image-obsessed family decided they absolutely did not want a daughter-in-law who comes from a family known for abandoning bleeding relatives in hospital beds to go sip cocktails on a beach. It was a massive society scandal. I do not say a single word. I let the silence hang, heavy and pregnant with karma. And I've gotten myself into a massive mountain of financial debt. Credit cards. Luxury accounts. I always just assumed Julian's trust fund would eventually cover the balances, but now he is gone and… She trails off, her breathing erratic. Clara, I honestly do not know how to survive this. Why are you calling me Beatrice? I ask, my voice completely neutral, devoid of both pity and malice. Because you are the only human being in my entire contact list who does not actively want to extract something from me, she sobs, the illusion completely breaking. Mom and Dad are absolutely furious with me. They won't stop screaming about how I ruined their reputation at the country club. My so-called friends instantly dropped me the second Julian's money vanished. And I am so alone, Clara. I sit in the quiet classroom, listening to my older sister genuinely, violently weep. These are real tears. The kind of agonizing, soul-deep tears you simply cannot fake for an audience. A dark, vindictive part of my brain desperately wants to say the words. I want to say, now you finally understand what it feels like to be completely abandoned. Now you know what it feels like to be terrified and entirely alone. But I close my eyes and take a deep breath. That is not the woman I fought so hard to become. Beatrice, I say, choosing my words with surgical precision. I am genuinely sorry that Julian abandoned you. I am truly sorry that you are currently in agonizing pain. You do not have to believe me, but it is the truth. However, I cannot step in and fix this disaster for you. I will not pay off your massive credit card debt, and I cannot manipulate Julian into coming back to you. Playing the savior is not my assigned role in this family anymore. The line is dead silent, save for her ragged breathing. Then why did you even bother answering the phone? She asks bitterly. Because you are my sister, I reply softly. And despite everything you have done, I wanted you to hear directly from my mouth that I do not actively hate you. She is quiet for a very, very long time. I can hear the rain lashing against her window through the phone speaker. I was an absolute monster to you for our entire lives, she finally whispers, the confession torn from her throat. Yes, you were. I don't know why I did it, Clara. I never had to try to earn their love. Everything was handed to me on a silver platter, and you had to bleed for every inch of your success. You were so incredibly smart and driven, and I think I was deeply, pathologically jealous of your strength. Maybe you were, I concede quietly. Can we ever repair this? Can we ever be a real family? I sit there and I truly, deeply analyze the question. I weigh the decades of psychological abuse against the raw vulnerability in her current voice. I don't know the answer to that, I tell her honestly. But if you are genuinely willing to put in the grueling psychological work to change, who you are, I am willing to cautiously try. Really? She gasps, sounding shocked. Really? But listen to me, Beatrice. You have to actually systematically alter your behavior. You cannot just apologize and expect the slate to be wiped clean. You have to prove it. I know I do. 2 full years after I collapsed on that stage, I am sitting in the 3rd row of a beautifully ornate, crowded civic auditorium. I am wearing a stunning emerald green dress, waiting for Silas to be called to the stage. The massive, gold-lettered banner hanging behind the polished mahogany podium reads, State Community Educator and Philanthropist of the Year. Maya is sitting directly to my left, wearing a sharp black suit, actually dressed up for the first time in her life. I honestly cannot believe it took the city board this long to finally recognize his massive contributions, she whispers, nudging my shoulder. The man deserves this award 10 times over. The master of ceremonies steps to the microphone and calls Silas's name. The entire auditorium erupts into a thunderous standing ovation. Silas walks slowly but proudly up the carpeted stairs to the podium. He is 80 years old, leaning slightly on a carved wooden cane, but he still projects the aura of a titan. He adjusts the microphone down to his level, scans the massive sea of faces, and his eyes instantly lock onto mine. He smiles, a radiant, purely joyful expression. I want to express my deepest gratitude to the committee for this profound honor. Silas begins, his deep voice carrying flawlessly to the back row. But if you will indulge an old man, I need to dedicate this crystal trophy to someone else. I dedicate it to my granddaughter, Clara. My breath hitches violently in my throat. Maya grabs my hand and squeezes it. Exactly 2 years ago, I sat helplessly in a different auditorium and watched this incredible young woman collapse on a stage. She had a bleeding mass in her brain. She very nearly lost her life that day. He pauses, and the silence in the room is absolute, heavy with anticipation. And when she finally woke up from the surgery, terrified and in pain, she discovered that the people whose biological duty it was to protect her had abandoned her. A collective, audible gasp ripples through the crowd. But Clara refused to surrender to the darkness. She refused to let the cruelty of others calcify her heart into bitterness. Instead, she took the ashes of her old life and she built an entirely new universe filled with people who love her unconditionally for exactly who she is, not for the labor she can provide them. She is a full-time educator now. She is actively shaping the minds of the next generation, proving to children every single day that their voices are powerful and necessary. His voice wavers, thick with unshed tears. My late wife, Cordelia, once told me a profound truth. She said, "The people who are most violently forgotten by the world are the ones who desperately need us to remember them the most." My granddaughter, Clara, taught me the true, living definition of those words. I am openly weeping now. Tears are streaming down my face, ruining my makeup. I look over and Maya is crying just as hard, wiping her face with the sleeve of her expensive suit. Silas raises the heavy crystal award high into the air, pointing it directly at me. "This trophy belongs entirely to you, my brave girl, for possessing the terrifying courage to finally choose yourself." After the ceremony concludes, the crowd mills into the lobby for champagne. I push my way through the throngs of well-wishers and throw my arms around Silas, hugging him so fiercely I think I might crack his ribs. I never want to let him go. "I love you so much, Grandpa." "I love you too, Clara," he whispers into my hair, patting my back with a trembling hand. "Your grandmother is looking down right now, and she is bursting with pride." "I know she is," I whisper back into the fabric of his suit. I finally know. My biological family remains a highly complicated, fractured ecosystem. I suppose it always will be. Arthur keeps his promise. He calls me every single Tuesday evening, and we talk about mundane, safe topics like the weather, my students, and his garden. Eleanor sends me expensive, beautifully written greeting cards on every major holiday, her tone always remaining incredibly careful, polite, and painfully distant. Beatrice has enrolled in intensive psychotherapy. We exchange text messages every few weeks, tentatively trying to build a bridge over a massive, burning chasm. But my true family, my chosen family, they are the ones who proved their loyalty when the sky was falling. They are the ones who showed up. Maya, Silas, the brilliant, chaotic children in my classroom. And finally, after 22 years of searching myself, if you have stayed with me through this entire grueling journey, I want to leave you with a psychological revelation that changed my life. I used to lie awake at night, agonizing over why my own mother found me so fundamentally unlovable. I tortured myself trying to calculate why I had to burn twice as bright to receive half the recognition my sister got for simply breathing. I wondered why I was completely invisible inside the walls of my own home. I finally understand the mechanics of the abuse. My mother was not born a cartoon villain. She was an incredibly deeply wounded, unhealed person who refused to address her own historical pain. In clinical psychology, the phenomenon is called projection. When an individual's suppressed, unresolved trauma violently spills over onto an innocent target. She looked at my face and saw the ghost of the mother-in-law who tortured her, and rather than doing the hard work to heal that deep wound, she allowed it to completely poison our relationship for over 2 decades. And my fatal flaw? My absolute weakness was my desperate, pathetic hunger for her validation. I operated under the delusion that if I just worked a little harder, sacrificed a little more of my soul, achieved one more impossible goal, they would finally look at me and grant me permission to exist. That specific behavioral pattern is called people-pleasing. It is a highly effective survival mechanism. It kept me safe and invisible when I was a helpless child. But as a grown woman, that same mechanism very nearly drove me into an early grave. The brain tumor was, without a doubt, the most agonizing, terrifying physical ordeal I have ever endured. But in a strange, twisted, cosmic way, it was also the greatest gift the universe could have possibly handed me. It violently ripped the blinders off my eyes and forced me to view my family dynamic with terrifying clarity. It gave me the undeniable, absolute permission to step off the stage and stop performing for an audience that had already left the theater. So, here are the absolute truths I have learned, the laws I now live by, and I hope you will carve them into your own heart. You cannot mathematically earn unconditional love from people who do not possess the capacity to give it. You must absolutely stop setting your own mental and physical well-being on fire just to keep toxic people warm, especially when they refuse to even acknowledge the flames that are burning you alive. Your true, authentic family is not determined by the random lottery of blood and genetics. It is explicitly determined by who stands next to your hospital bed when the machines are beeping and the world is falling apart. And finally, the most important lesson of all, you are fundamentally allowed to prioritize your own survival. Choosing yourself, protecting your peace, and walking away from abuse is not an act of selfishness. It is the purest form of self-preservation. If you are currently trapped in a situation that mirrors my past, if you are the invisible pillar holding up a collapsing house, the forgotten child, the one who constantly bleeds out so others can thrive, please hear my voice right now. I see you. I recognize your exhaustion. And I pray that you discover, exactly like I did, that the only validation you will ever truly need to survive in this world is the validation you give yourself. Thank you for sitting with me through the darkness and walking with me into the light. If you have your own personal story about navigating toxic family dynamics, establishing terrifying boundaries, or finally recognizing your own inherent worth, please share it. The world needs to hear your voice, and I promise you, I read every single story you share. If my journey resonated with your soul, I ask you to engage with this platform so we can build a community of survivors. There is another powerful narrative waiting for you. Something in my bones tells me you are exactly the person who needs to hear it. Stay strong, protect your peace, and I will see you next time.